Bernie,
Yep, all set.
I'd like to call this meeting to order. Due to the COVID-19 health emergency, and in order for the Board of Education to conduct its business, this board meeting is being held by video conference and streamed on YouTube on the district website at www.ebnet.org. In addition, members of the public may provide comment at this meeting through Zoom by entering the URL, meeting ID, and password you see before you on the screen. Upon joining the meeting, your participation will be muted to ensure that there is no disruption to the business being conducted by the Board of Education. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Mr. Perangelo.
Here.
Mrs. Chu.
Here.
Mr. Sismar.
Here.
Mrs. Guas. Mr. Hong.
Here.
Mrs. Lax.
Here.
Mrs. Reese.
Mrs. Reese will not be here tonight. She's
Noted.
observing the last night of Shiva for her husband's mother.
Mr. Winston
Here.
and President Becker.
Here, we have a quorum. Please rise to salute the flag. I pledge allegiance
To the
To the flag of the United States of America,
and to
and
to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
under God, indivisible,
with
with liberty
and
and
justice.
justice for all.
for all. Lori, would you mind pinging Heather, please, and seeing if she's planning on joining us and just running late? Thank you. The New Jersey Open Public Meeting Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend meetings of public bodies. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the East Brunswick Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published at the Board of Education offices. Written notice was also provided to the Sentinel, the Newark Star Ledger, the Home News and Tribune, and the Municipal Clerk of East Brunswick. All Board of Education meetings, with the exception of executive session discussions, are videotaped for later broadcast, and individuals who speak at the board's public meetings should be aware of these videotaping rules. Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight. Dr. Valesky, first item is the superintendent's report.
Thank you, President Becker, and good evening, everyone. Tomorrow, Friday, May 7th, is recognized as National School Lunch Hero Day. On this day, we celebrate our child nutrition staff for all they do every day, especially during the pandemic. Last March, when the world was shook with so many uncertainties and challenges, our child nutrition team still maintained their commitment to make sure each and every child in our community did not go hungry. Now, 1 year later, our staff still makes it a priority to ensure our children are given the meals they need to maintain good health and nutrition. Thank you so much to the child nutrition team. You truly are heroes. Our Board of Education and the dedicated staff at East Brunswick Public Schools has a history of demonstrated leadership, preparedness, and strategic focus on the future. I would like to provide two significant examples. When the tragic Parkland High School shooting occurred in Florida, the East Brunswick Board of Education took immediate steps the very next evening to give me the authority to arm our school security officers. Our implementation of that board action was swift because over a period of time, we had already prepared for it. The East Brunswick Board of Education authorized resources to purchase a learning management system along with laptops and Chromebooks for our students and professional development for our teachers. When the pandemic was looming and our governor issued an executive order that we would be closing our district and moving to remote virtualized instruction within days of his announcement, we already had the infrastructure, technology, and support to immediately shift our teaching and learning. Our implementation was again swift because over a period of time, we had already prepared for it. Tonight, we have another significant milestone to address in the evolution of East Brunswick Public Schools. The board will consider my recommendation for restructuring our grades and installing temporary classroom units at Churchill, which will create and maintain adequate elementary classroom space to appropriately accommodate incoming students beginning September 2022. And just to recap for the audience, the proposal is that elementary schools will be pre-K to 4. Hammersholt is proposed to be a grade 5, 6 as an upper elementary school. Churchill is proposed to be grades 7, 8, and 9. And East Brunswick High School will remain unchanged with grades 10, 11, and 12. It is important to restate the root cause of our enrollment challenges that prompted my recommendation for temporary classroom unit additions and grade restructuring beginning September 2022. Based on current enrollment, we have used all our elementary classroom capacity. Additionally, we do not have the current capacity to expand special education programming at our elementary schools. And this is after we have moved art and music out of their designated classrooms. We can accurately forecast that a migration of elementary age students to East Brunswick Public Schools is ongoing and imminent. Our commissioned demographic study update dated June 2019 forecasted elementary student enrollment growth of over 400 students by 2024. We all have our own personal stories about loss and change during this global crisis. And most of the change we experienced was immediate and unavoidable. I want to take a moment to speak directly to the parents who sent emails and who spoke at the Community Interactive Forum we held this past Tuesday. I am empathetic to your concern and the impact to our students. I clearly heard that some of you want to delay the implementation of this plan. And I assure you, I'm not trying to introduce unnecessary change in spite of a pandemic. I am making this grade level recommendation change tonight in response to the pandemic. And I am confident that by doing so, we can be immediately responsive to the social, emotional, mental health, and academic needs of especially our pre-K to 4 learners in smaller class size environments. Relating back to my initial comments about how our past successes have been rooted in preparedness, I am concerned that delaying this grade level restructuring proposal for even 1 year will place us in a position of not being prepared to support and educate our elementary students at the high levels that have become a standard for East Brunswick Public Schools. The migration to East Brunswick has begun to accelerate, along with housing sales and enrollment into our Blue Ribbon School District, which, by the way, recently earned recognition by advancing on the latest U.S. News and World Report high school ranking. Like we have consistently proven before, I simply want our district to be prepared. And I would like to highlight just some of the opportunities afforded by this proposal. In pre-K to 4, the smaller elementary enrollment results in more student contact time and individualized attention from ESL teachers, reading and math specialists, and student assistant specialists. And then from there, we'll continue to use our response to intervention model to diagnose and remediate learning gaps for all students. Smaller class sizes will allow teachers to differentiate to meet the needs of all learners in the class. The child study team will have more student contact time. Student assistant specialists will have greater frequency to push into classes and do more work with students, groups, and individuals. Elementary clubs will be open to and designed for younger students. And as an aside, by moving 5th grade from elementary schools to Hammersholt, vehicle and pedestrian traffic flow at elementary schools for arrival and dismissal could be lessened and become more manageable. And then moving on to Hammersholt, what are the benefits of Hammersholt as an upper elementary school? The learning opportunities will be strong at Hammersholt, but they'll be paced for 5th and 6th graders to elongate the transition to 7th grade. Our 5th grade students will benefit from science instruction in dedicated lab space environments, arts education in subject-designed art in music rooms, cross-curricular instruction taught in a media center for skill development, researching, and technology integration, access to STEM labs and classroom kitchens, enhanced character development and recognition, the opportunity for preschool buddy readers, social events geared specifically to 5th and 6th grade students, and clubs and activities geared specifically toward upper elementary students. All of this while maintaining an atmosphere of an upper elementary school for our 5th and 6th graders. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Valesky. Okay, next we have a public hearing on the fiscal year 2022 school district budget. In a minute, I'm going to ask if there are any members of the public who wish to comment on this. I want to remind the public that for this part of the public hearing, it is on the school district budget only. If you wish to speak of other matters at the good of the cause, we will be having the regular good of the cause right afterwards. But when I call for anyone wishing to speak to the board now, it will be only on the school district budget. Again, Bernie, do you have the screen to show our URL, meeting and ID, in case anyone wants to join to speak about the budget?
Just a moment.
No problem. Thank you so much. If you wish to comment on the 2022 school district budget, enter the URL, meeting ID, and password you see before you on the screen. In order to be recognized, use the chat feature, select the Zoom meeting host, then enter and send your name to the host. You will be recognized to speak when your name is called, and individuals will be invited to speak in the order in which we have received your request. Is there anyone wishing to speak to the board about the 2022 school district budget?
Mrs. Becker, point of order. We have to first, we have a presentation initially on the school district budget, which will be followed by the opportunity for individuals to speak.
Okay, please present.
Thank you. So let's begin with district facts, and many of these are items that we have presented in the past, but they bear repeating and reviewing. First of all, the district as an operational entity. We do function as a business. We are the 30th largest school district in New Jersey. That's as of 2019 fiscal year. We're the largest employer within East Brunswick. In terms of our population, the school population, we are larger than some municipalities. And you can see just a couple of examples and how we compare to the township on the whole. So we're kind of a town within a town almost. That is excluding the number of staff that we have employed. We operate a major transit system. Now, some of the data I'm reviewing is from the prior year because the pandemic had impacted some of the data, but we will be bouncing back to the levels that we were at. We operate 570 routes, traveling over the course of the entire school year, 3.42 million miles. And if we look at the number of passengers in the course of every day, morning and afternoon, and multiply that out throughout the entire course of the year, that's 2.4 million passengers, which is quite extensive. We're a major food service provider, and certainly Dr. Valesky mentioned what our child nutrition folks, how they've supported us during this past year. But we are a major food service provider. In the prior year, we served over 564,000 lunches, 266,000 a la carte meals, 92,000 breakfasts. We maintain a substantive amount of building and land. You can see some comparisons with regard to the square footage of our facilities and the square footage of our the acreage in comparison to some other locations. We also have always strived to control our costs, and we participate in a variety of shared services agreements. We have worked diligently on an energy program, and as a matter of fact, we are coming to the close of our energy savings improvement program, which has affected every single building within this school district. And currently, the tail end of that program includes the addition of solar energy at several of our locations, and that is at Churchill Junior High School, at Central School, at Lawrence Brook School, and at Memorial School. Through our in-house transportation services and multi-tiering our bus routes, we have created efficiencies which translate into cost savings. We utilize the Educational Services Commission of New Jersey to also support a variety of services, from transportation to special education services and so on. We work with the township to seek opportunities for cost savings through financial arrangements and services, as well as through the County of Middlesex. And we're always keeping an eye on the long-term debt and refinancing whenever those opportunities arise. And those opportunities have resulted in many millions of dollars of savings over the last several years alone. As a revenue producer, our community programs operations and our facility use has produced a substantive amount of revenue for the district through the various programs and services that we provide. And those revenues have been very key to supporting the school district budget. They've provided millions of dollars to help support the programs and services of the school district. And the excellence that the district has always strived for really goes without saying. I think the community is well aware of what we have done and the achievements of our students and staff. And the excellence is not limited on the achievements of students and staff, but also with regard to how we manage our finances. And over the last 7 and 5 years consecutively and respectively, the district has been awarded certificates of excellence in its financial reporting and management from the Association of School Business Officials International and the Government Finance Officers Association. So let's review some budget facts. And these are facts that were reported during the presentation of the tentative budget. Firstly, on state aid, we can see that we're only just recovering from a substantive cut in state aid that occurred between the 2010 and 2011 school years, where we were reduced roughly $6.6 million at that time. And then subsequent to that period of time, you see that state aid relatively stayed flat while costs to operate the school district continue to rise. Last year, in the last year's budget development, we started out with a $22.2 million state aid level. We had struck a budget, and then subsequent to having struck a budget and moved forward with implementing the budget, due to the pandemic, the state cut state aid, and we had to scurry to make some changes in a very fast pace in order to continue operations and yet continue to provide services as well. For the fiscal 2022 year, our state aid is $25.8 million. So what are the impacts? Because there have been questions with regard to the impacts as to the increased aid levels. And part of it is that the savings that we had applied to the current year from custodial and transportation services, that was a 1-year savings because those services were brought back into place for the current year. So those were savings during the period of March through June of 2020 because of the pandemic, because we were fully shut down. But those savings do not continue moving forward since the services are in full force again. Our enterprise revenues. So those are the revenues from the early morning programs, the facility use. Our enterprise revenues were substantively impacted as well because the use of our facilities and the services we provided had to be curtailed. So there was an impact in terms of our revenue. We did tap into our retained earnings to help support the budget during and close the gap from last year. However, that was a one-time issue. So in order to continue to sustain the budget going forward, as I mentioned earlier, we will be recovering on our enterprises, but the enterprise revenue impact that needed to be filled is for the current year. Our collective bargaining and contractual base salary commitments are nearly $2.6 million. And our health benefits projected increase net, that's after employee contributions, will be going up approximately $200,000. Transportation services will increase roughly $340,000 and facilities maintenance approximately $560,000. Our charter school obligation is increasing roughly $420,000. And our insurance costs, other than health benefits, and that is liability, errors and omissions, property, automobile, and bus insurance, that is all increasing roughly $100,000. So all told, those amounts come out to almost $6 million, which is equivalent to the state aid increase that we are seeing. Let's take a quick look in terms of the charter school impact since 2009. 2009 and 2010 were very small levels of charter school obligation. But in 2011 is when we were initially hit with a substantive impact to the school district budget, requiring major changes in how we operate. And since 2011, there's been a steady increase in the amount that is funded to operate charter schools. Now, these funds come directly out of the budget. The district does not receive any additional resources for this. State aid comes into the district, and the district must pay out vis-a-vis state aid and a certain portion from other sources to operate the charter schools. This is not a voluntary aspect. This is mandatory pursuant to the law. And our current obligation for the fiscal 2022 school year is over $3.6 million. So you can see from fiscal 2011 to 2022, a period of 11 fiscal years, that obligation has gone up approximately $2.4 million in that period of time. So we're here with the public hearing on the budget. And there are a few revisions for final adoption. And this is a period of time when, this is the period of time during which revisions to the budget may be made prior to final adoption. They have to be presented during the public hearing. And so from the tentative budget, we'll review now what some of those revisions are. Firstly, on the revenue side, there's the use of banked cap. That was something that had been foregone last year. If you may recall that we made a decision not to utilize bank cap due to the pandemic, but as we're coming out of the pandemic and to help support the objectives of the district, bank cap is being utilized. On the appropriations side, making changes in terms of the flex program, the relocation of the program from Churchill to the high school will result in savings of approximately $80,000. We also have a reduction in salaries and benefits for 4 vacant positions in the facilities management area. And so that will result in a reduction of $325,000 and an offset for property maintenance that will be required. And thus that area will increase approximately $222,000. And then the net for capital improvements, the net for capital improvements, which will go toward a preparation for TCUs and other site work that's necessary, is at $1.7 million. That will leave us with a balanced budget. Our balanced budget will be at $172,263,393. The general fund tax increase will be offset by a decrease in the debt service fund for a net tax increase of $3.8 million, roughly 2.8%. Following the budget hearing and opportunity for public comment, the final budget will be adopted at the Board of Education meeting to be held next week on May 13th. And any information with regard to the budget will be posted on the district website. Currently, the district website does have all of the materials and details pertaining to the tentative budget, the final budget, and user-friendly budget will all be presented on the website once the final budget is adopted. And that concludes the presentation with regard to the public hearing on the budget.
Thank you, Bernie. Now that the budget presentation has concluded, now I would like to invite members of the public to speak to the board about the fiscal year 2022 school district budget and that topic only. Is there anyone wishing to speak to the board about the budget?
We have no one in the queue who has requested to speak on the budget.
Okay, seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. And now we come to the good of the cause for the public. Members of the public may provide comment at this meeting through Zoom by entering the URL, meeting ID, and password we have been showing throughout the meeting. And one more time, here it is. In order to be recognized, use the chat feature, select the Zoom meeting host, then enter and send your name to the host, and you will be recognized to speak when your name is called. Individuals will be invited to speak in the order in which we have received your request. Participants will be limited to 3-minute duration. Is there anyone wishing to speak to the board tonight?
Yes, we have Peter DeSiena.
Okay, good evening, Peter.
Yes, good evening. My name is Peter DeSiena. I'm a father of 3 children within the district. I spoke, one currently in 9th grade, one in 7th, and one in 5th. And I spoke Tuesday evening at the public forum, raising my concerns against the proposal to acquire the temporary trailers at Churchill Junior High. But I felt it necessary to voice my concern again tonight to you, the members of the board. Upon learning about the proposal and hearing from Dr. Valesky, I've only seen information on demographics, but there's little information as to how this is going to impact the educational model, as well as the social and emotional development of our children. Now, I do understand that as a school district, you have to consider the amount of students entering the district, but I feel like goal cannot and should not be achieved at the neglect of the educational and social developments of the students. Furthermore, the timing of this project, both in the rush to get something done, as well as coming off of more than a year of COVID restrictions, further makes this decision a little hasty. As a parent of a fifth grader coming off of an inconsistent year of structured education, I do not see the wisdom in sending our fifth graders off to Hammersholt for 1 year, according to this current plan. That'll be 1 year of learning a new school, adapting to a new school schedule, of changing classrooms for each individual class, maybe the use of lockers, maybe not, depending on the state and CDC guidelines for next year. And there's also a new level of organization and independence that will be placed on the student. Some of these students have not returned to school in over a year. Some of them have been hybrid. However, it's still on a modified school day schedule. And as resilient as Dr. Valeski feels these children are, I don't feel that this action will set our students up for success the following year when they transition to Churchill, which will be another new building, another new class schedule, one that is now on an 84-minute block schedule, a new level of organization, as well as a whole new social change of being with ninth graders who developmentally do not relate to the seventh graders. I've watched my two daughters transition during normal school years through Hammersholt and Churchill, and I can tell you that the first year is not a sufficient amount of time to adjust to that school environment. Furthermore, after looking into the proposal, I'm just still unclear as to the actual impact upon the class sizes of the elementary schools. I see that it's projected that the school district will increase by about 372 children in the pre-K to fifth grade age range by 2023. And I know that this number is not going to be spread out amongst all elementary schools. However, if you do some quick math, that 372 students spread out amongst all 8 schools averages out to roughly 47 children per school. And that could possibly be, if you divide that even further amongst the 6th grade levels, that's about 8 children per grade level. And I know smaller class sizes.
That was time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to address the board tonight?
We have Marcella Betzer.
Okay, hello, Marcella.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I'm a parent of twins in 5th grade at Bound Monroe Elementary, and I really appreciate the board's decision at the April 22nd meeting to delay the vote on the proposed grade configuration plan. I also want to thank you for allowing us to have a forum 2 days ago, which I attended along with nearly 200 other parents. I do have some concerns I want to share about the proposed grade reconfiguration plan. In the current plan as implemented in the proposed timeline, our 5th graders would have at least 3 continuous challenging years. The current year ending in June, in which they effectively lost their 5th grade year during the pandemic, along with many, if not most, of the activities and milestones that usually take place. Being 6th graders at Hammersholt under a pandemic recovery year, in which they may still be wearing masks and dealing with a somewhat abnormal year as they try to adjust and adapt to in-person learning in a brand new environment. Then moving to 7th grade, adjusting again to a brand new school, including a very concerning earlier school start time for 1 additional earlier year, instead of being able to start at 8:03, starting at 7:25. And they'll also be really impacted by a phase 2 construction, potentially attending school in a construction zone for years. I am a public health professional. I currently direct a pediatric mental behavioral health program at the New Jersey chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics. From what I've seen in my own family, my friends, through my work, significant increases in families seeking mental health services for their children across the state, I think our kids really need 2 years of stability to transition from this past year's experience of the COVID-19 pandemic. Dealing with our children's emotional grief from losses of this past year has been extremely challenging. And some of us just got our kids in school 5 days a week last month. So thinking of them having only 1 year at Hammersholt is honestly extremely upsetting. One of my concerns is also regarding school start times. Moving 5th grade to Hammersholt moves students from a grade in which they have a 9:10 start time to an 8:03 start time, about 1 hour earlier. And moving 7th grade to Churchill moves the adolescents in that grade from an 8:03 start time to 7:25, a difference of 38 minutes. This is a significant concern for me and other parents, and sleep is one of the most important factors in our health and well-being. Our adolescents are already chronically sleep deprived. I just feel they really need to educate our community about this and move forward in a meaningful way on implementing healthier school start times. There were some studies conducted during remote learning last spring when some schools automatically changed their start times to 8:30 and even 9 because there was no need for transportation, showed the immense benefit to teenagers' physical and mental health and improved cognitive effects. I know about all of the challenges to making this change
10
of delaying
seconds.
school start times, and there's many innovative approaches we can do that won't impact athletics or the budget. I think we should start, and we should start now. Our children's physical and mental health depends on it.
Time.
Thank you, Marcella. Is there anyone else, Bernie?
Yes, we have Shannon Searle.
Hello, Shannon.
Hi, good evening, Dr. Valesky and members of the board. I just want to really echo what some of the other parents have been saying and said the other night. This has been such a crucial year, over a year of change for all of our students, all of our children. This is something that has never been seen before. Next year, I have a son in 5th grade. Let me just start with that. My son is in 5th grade, and next year, for most students, the change from 5th grade from elementary school to Hammersholt Middle School is in and of itself a huge transition. So now we're dealing with a move to Hammersholt after over a year of many of the students have been completely virtual. My son did just start last month doing the hybrid because I did that purposely so that he would have some getting used to being back in a classroom before he switches to Hammersholt. So that in and of itself, going from being virtual almost over a year and then starting a middle school in a brand new school, brand new environment, brand new teachers, brand new routine, I would like him to have time to adjust to that and not have to get used to that for a year and then end up moving again to another school. Unfortunately, the students were not able to see Hammersholt. In fact, my son said, are we going to actually see the school before we go in? And I don't know if during the orientation over the summer, they'll be able to do that. I hope so. So I know he's concerned about, what this new school will be like. It would be nice if he could have another year at Hammersholt before he has to pick up and move to another school. And I think many of the parents or all of the parents would agree with that. They had a presentation that Dr. Gaskell gave and other students gave from Hammersholt, just explaining all about Hammersholt. And they were wonderful presentations. The students talked about, and again, this was made before the pandemic, so things are much different, obviously. But all of the students that spoke and Dr. Gaskell explained how wonderful Hammersholt is. And it is. I actually have an older son who is a freshman in college right now. So he's gone through all of the schools. I'm familiar with obviously Hammersholt, Churchill, the high school. And
10 seconds, ma'am. 10 seconds.
Okay. I just really think that this is not the time to make this change. Give the students time to adjust to
It's time.
Thank you, Shannon. Bernie, do we have anyone next?
We have no one else waiting in the queue.
Okay. Seeing no one, I close the public portion. Moving on to tonight's agenda. Before accepting a motion on the Board of Education items, is there anything needing to be separated out by anyone? Mark?
Can we separate out item number 3?
Item number 3, policy, second reading and approval.
That's with regard to.
That's what you want to separate out, Mark? Could you please make a motion for that?
Well, we don't
Make a
need a motion
motion.
to separate that.
I'm sorry, Bernie?
We don't need a motion to separate it. We can simply pass on that one until after the other items are voted on.
Okay, then we'll just take them one by one. We'll just make it easy. Okay. First item on the Board of Education agenda, the minutes for April 22nd. Can I please have a motion? Moved by Lori, second by Mark. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Item number 2, policies for second reading and approval. Can I please have a motion for that?
So moved, Lori.
Moved by Lori,
Second, Jeff.
second by Mark. Is there any discussion? All those in roll, will the secretary please call the roll?
Mr. Colangelo,
Yes.
Mrs. Chu,
Yes.
Mr. Sismar,
Yes.
Mrs. Gloss,
Yes.
Mr. Hong,
Yes.
Mrs. Lax,
Yes.
Mr. Winston,
Yes.
President Becker.
Yes, motion carries. Item number 3, policy second reading and approval. Can I please have a motion for that?
So moved.
Moved by Lori,
Second.
second by Susanna. Is there any discussion? Mark?
Yes, just to remind everybody, this is the policy 152, which is the election of board officers. I had brought to the board the simple notion of allowing a candidate for the board officer's position to make a statement of what they would bring to the board and what leadership qualities they would have. I also suggested that we have questions that could come from the board in a public setting to anybody who wished to be a candidate to lead the board. I'll give it to Ms. Becker. It's a very tough position, but I think the board members should have an opportunity in a public setting to ask questions of potential leaders, how they would lead this very important board. It did not pass on the first reading. Again, I wanted to remind you of how I feel on that, about transparency, and, maybe suggest reconsidering it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Any other discussion, Jeff?
Yeah, without repeating a lot of what Mark said, and a lot of this was discussed at the May 22nd meeting. And in that meeting, a couple of things came from that. And one of the questions I had asked, and I'm still having trouble understanding the answer. Actually, I understand the answer. I'm having much trouble accepting it. So I would ask, put this back to the policy committee chair, Ms. Chu. When this idea and proposal that Mark had brought up, when Mr. Sismar had brought up, explain to me what exactly is the objection. At the last meeting, you stated because no other districts did it was your primary reason. I was wondering if you want to expand on that, or is that essentially still the motivation there?
We follow best practices of what districts are doing, and none of the board members at the committee meeting felt it was necessary. By the time you're there, you know each other pretty well. You've been there, you've run for election, you've made lots of public statements. So by the time you're there, you're very well known.
Okay, so it's the familiarity. Well, they may, and I think that's a reasonable answer as board members, but we're also elected officials due to represent this township. I absolutely agree with Mr. Sismar when he states this reoccurring virus that comes into this board and has existed for far too long is a lack of transparency. The public, I understand, Ms. Chu, that you believe that people on this board know each other, but I think the public, more than us, we are not the stakeholders, we represent the stakeholders, deserves to hear from their leadership that leads the largest budget allocation in this township with their taxpayer dollars. And it is just so disturbing to me that once again, we've defaulted back to lack of transparency, which continuously gets us into situations where we have to over-explain to the public. I am very upset by this. There is no motivation. Best practices according to whom? Very, very disappointing. Once again, hiding behind the shroud and reducing the transparency that this public needs. That's it.
Mark Colangelo, I believe you had your hand up.
With all due respect, Ms. Chu, strongly disagree with you saying that we all know each other. I am a perfect example of why we should have a little speech or a little something to understand, because I didn't know President Becker before. I don't know the other board members other than Mark and Jeff. So I appreciate you, I respect you, but you're off base on that one because we don't know each other. I didn't know, Ms. Lax or Mr. Hahn. I don't know anybody. And as a new board member, it would have been appropriate to have a little discussion as to, I'm going to be president, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And whoever was running for each, the vice president, things like that, it would have helped me a lot as a new board member to have that opportunity to hear people, speak publicly, not phone calls or not emails, whatever, texting, which is fine. I don't mind that. That's totally cool. But publicly come out and say, I want to help the board this way. I'm going to do this way. And I do support President Becker, obviously, but as a new member, it was very challenging for me. So that is the reason. And best practices for other boards, we're not that other board, we're this board. And to be transparent, it could be a little bit handled with a different explanation. So I respect you.
Susanna, did you want to reply?
Sure. I just wanted to add that remember that board members are on all the board meetings. For someone who runs for the Board of Education, I certainly hope that one would have, watched many of the meetings that are open to the public. Also, in order to be on the board, you run, right? You're running. There are statements made throughout that time when the Board of Education member runs. When the candidate is nominated, the person making the nomination is making assessment based on having worked with that person and making the statement and summarizing their reason for why the board candidate deserves to be considered for the role. So there's lots of transparency with regard to board members being on these public meetings regularly over a period of time, a long period of time before, certainly it's not someone who's just elected to the board, nobody knows them, and then they're suddenly running for a leadership position. So there's lots of reasons why there's plenty of transparency. And when we talk about best practices, how many hundreds of school districts are there in the state of New Jersey? I think there's something to be said about, there's a standard approach and there's a good reason for it. From my experience on the board over the past few years, the process has worked.
I wanted to add that I understand what Jeff and Mark are saying, but I also feel that, as it has been brought up by Susanna, that board members go through an election by the public in November. It is very transparent. Board members have a lot of exposure, a lot of opportunities to let people know about themselves, either through public debates or social medias or community events. This is not an election by the public. It is simply an election for the board to elect a president and a vice president for the year. I don't feel that process equates into a lack of transparency for this board. And I guess I'm disappointed to hear that others do, because I feel that we are a very transparent board. And the fact that somebody doesn't make a statement before the board is voting on a leader of the group does not mean that we are not a transparent group. Also, with the nominating process, the person nominating the board member brings up an awful lot of reasons why that person should be considered for the role of president or vice president. And as Mark had mentioned the last meeting, which I thought was a really good idea, a board member can nominate themselves and make a statement. So it's already built in, I feel. And that's why I wasn't supporting the recommendation, Mark. Lori? And then Mark Angelo.
Yeah, I just wanted to make, Jeff, I appreciate your passion, and I love the fact that you have been someone who's been a champion for transparency. And when you ran, that's one of the things that you said, that you felt this board wasn't. And I'm hoping that now, since you've been here for a bit, you can see that there's a fine line between transparency and confidentiality, because one of the things that's very important as a board is confidentiality. And I really, truly, in my heart of hearts, don't believe that we have a lack of transparency on this board, as evidenced by the fact that every time, and you look what happened on Tuesday and the meeting tonight, we invite the public into whatever areas we can, because we do represent the public, and our job is to make sure that this district is run well for the public. So I just wanted to say to you, board member to board member, personally, as I said, I applaud what you're saying, but I don't think a lack of transparency is the problem. I think that we do. And again, what Vicki said, simply board leadership is board leadership. It's running meetings, and it's things that you should see, the leadership skills in your fellow board members. And for Mark, you're new, absolutely. You come into a meeting, but the reality is we have turnovers at times when you have a meeting. And then my suggestion would be to a new board member coming in, abstain on the leadership for the first meeting if you don't know who the players are, because everybody else has served on that board for a period of time and gotten to know their colleagues. And this is a hard year too, Mark. And we haven't met face to face, none of us, with you, because unfortunately this has been a strange year for us. So usually we don't live in a pandemic, thank God, and we do have meetings and a lot of time together. So that's the only thing I wanted to say. But Jeff, I'm not trying, I don't mean this as a debate with you. As I said, I applaud every time you've come out and said, we're here to represent the public. I just wanted to just clarify that one point for me, because I do take transparency and confidentiality both very seriously. So I just wanted to distinguish the two.
Mark Colangelo?
If I abstained, it could be 4-4. So I don't understand that kind of thing. In my personal opinion, I do own a school, federal financial aid, accredited, the whole 9 yards. I've been down education before. I've been through things, and I am new here. It would have been beneficial if I could have had the person that ran for each position make a statement. And that's all. I don't have the biggest pony in this horse, whatever. I appreciate the president, and she knows that. So it's just the person that nominates you isn't you. They could say you're this, you're that, blah, blah, blah. That's cool. I've been nominated for plenty of things, but I still had to go up and make a speech to show everyone who I am or what I'm into. So in my opinion, and finally skip by this, I suppose, it would have been beneficial if the person can speak. That's all. And, but I appreciate everyone on the board, and I would love to meet everybody. Even it is a tough time. I would like to,
Thank you, Mark. I'm trying not to take this conversation personally. Mark Sismar?
And I'll start my comment with Ms. Becker. President Becker, you do a good job. I'm not taking that away from you.
I know. Thank you very much, Mark.
As board members, and like I said, your position is very important. Board members never take cold questions from the public. And this is even something where board members in a leadership role are saying they don't want to take a question from a fellow board member in the public. I'll limit the transparency to that. I'm not saying, I'm not going to go with a widespread. We're focusing on this policy. And I just can't understand somebody that wants to be in that type of a leadership position is refusing to take questions from the fellow board members in a public setting. That's where I'll limit my transparency discussion to. So thank you for listening to me.
And again, I guess we'll have to agree to disagree. I don't look at voting no on your recommendation as refusing to address other board members' questions. So we'll agree to disagree. Anyone else wishing to speak on this? Did I see anyone's hand? I want to make sure I get everybody. Okay. Seeing no more discussion, will the secretary please call the roll?
Mr. Colangelo,
We're voting just on this one item.
item 3,
All right, no,
bylaw 0152.
no,
Mrs. Chu,
Yes.
Mr. Sismar,
No.
Mrs. Guas,
Yes.
Mr. Hong,
Yes.
Mrs. Lax,
Yes.
sorry, she's not here, Mr. Winston,
Absolutely not.
and President Becker.
Yes,
Motion
motion carries. Thank you. Good discussion. Can I please have a motion on item 4, regulations, first reading and approval?
So moved.
Moved by Lori, second by Mark too. Is there any discussion? Will the secretary please call the roll?
Mr. Colangelo,
yes,
Mrs. Chu,
Yes.
Mr. Sismar,
Yes.
Mrs. Guas,
Yes.
Mr. Hong,
Yes.
Mrs. Lax,
Yes.
Mr. Winston,
Yes.
President Becker.
Yes, motion carries. Before accepting a motion on our curriculum and instruction items, is there anything needing to be separated out? Seeing none, can I please have a motion for items 1 through 2 on our curriculum agenda?
So
moved.
moved.
So moved. Jeff.
Moved by Jeff, second by Lori. Is there any discussion? This is not a roll call vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Moving on to our facilities agenda. Can I please have a motion for item 1, approval to proceed with acquisition of temporary classroom units and grade reconfiguration?
so
So
moved.
moved.
Moved by Mark Colangelo, second by Lori. Is there any discussion? Jeff?
Thank you. Just a question really for Dr. Valesky. I appreciate everything I've heard regarding this issue. And if there's one common thread amongst all, especially from the parents who have been forthcoming with their concerns, it definitely surrounds itself with the mental health issue. And as I've been an advocate for mental health of our students since joining this board 2.5 years ago, I want to revisit that as a priority beyond many of the other issues, but I want to really concentrate on that. So before I vote on this, and I hate to put your feet to the fire, I need you to talk to me very specifically, and you touched on it in your superintendent's report. How are you going to address the mental health issues in every nuance of this? The 5th grader concerns, which I heard the gentleman speak about earlier, being 1 year in the school. I mean, there are a lot of great points that parents are bringing up. My kids have passed on the grades that this is impacting. So really simply, tell me about what you're going to do, what you're going to put in place, and what you're willing to commit to address the mental health carve-out this plan.
Thank you, Mr.
Good
Winston.
question.
So, obviously, this has been a focus of this administration and our discussions with the board before the pandemic. The public may not be aware that this board approved funds in last year's budget to engage Effective School Solutions. It's an outside company that came in to evaluate our district for a variety of supports, but mental health and having supports through our psychiatric supports that were available to the district was really important to us. We had been watching for years through our HIV process, through our different professionals within the district, about the certain students that needed supports within the schools and their families too. And then we had a pandemic. So The commitment is that we are going to focus heavily on the elementary schools, pre-K to 4, but that doesn't mean we're not going to focus on everyone else, because literally every student that touches our door, every family that supports a student that touches our door may be impacted by some mental health aspect resulting from the pandemic. So having smaller class sizes in the elementary schools allows our professionals in those schools to engage with those students more frequently and in a more clinical way every single day. Then they can refer to the professionals that we have through Effective School Solutions and be able to provide supports. One of the things that we discovered was sometimes we would identify that a child would need support, but the family, for a variety of reasons, wouldn't be able to engage that support outside of school. It might be transportation, it might be financial, it might be insurance, a variety of situations. So that's why this board supported having that resource available to our students in the school. That's a huge impact, but having smaller class sizes at elementary schools is going to have a substantially larger impact. But then you mentioned about Hammersholt. And as our students, our 5th and 6th grade students move to Hammersholt as an upper elementary setting, they're going to have access now to 2 full-time student assistant specialists instead of 1 at the elementary school. They're going to have access to 4 school counselors. They're going to have access to 2 school nurses. And the child study team, they'll have access to a case manager 5 days a week. We want to minimize the referrals to special education. And in this kind of environment, this is what we're looking at. We're trying to provide supports to students so we can eliminate those referrals to special education and support our students so they can continue their career path in East Brunswick with all the supports that they need. We may not be able to remediate that student within one grade level setting, but we have the supports in place throughout our continuum to support that student to graduation.
All right, thank you. I really appreciate that answer. And just as a follow-up to that then, one of the comments that were made tonight by the public, and one that I read consistently in the threads of the emails that have been going back and forth, is something that didn't exist when I went from elementary school up to Churchill. I'm not even sure my parents knew I made a move, but I know things are very different today. So there's a lot of rite of passage that takes place with the moving up ceremonies. So there's a lot of movement in that I think has the potential of being lost. What are your thoughts around that? And if you've thought it through, how would you help mitigate what seems like a loss and is a loss where it comes to those specific opportunities for these kids?
Absolutely. And, so that came out clearly in the public interactive forum about the loss and about these moments that families and their children were looking forward to. And I'm committing to the community that we're going to reinvent those, and may not be at that grade level, but we can recreate those circumstances and make that significant at these changes. During the transition, obviously, and one of the things that came out, not only tonight, but in the interactive forum, one of the greater impact is going to be whatever year the board supports this to move forward. That if it happens in 2022, that's going to be the year of impact. After that, everything begins to restabilize again for every subsequent year. But making sure that we meet the needs of every family member, every student, to ensure those memorialized, these significant ceremonial events can be recreated for those children, because they have lost them. We haven't been able to have them. And in fact, you know, as a parent of a graduate, when we moved to the football field for 4 ceremonies, that graduation ceremony was nice, but it wasn't the same as having the entire class together. And, so you got to see firsthand that impact as a board member, as a parent. So we, as a district, we try our best every day to make sure that we can celebrate our students. We provide opportunities. And in fact, we're working hard with the PTA to provide the 5th grade field trip for this year, to make that happen after the governor released his restrictions. So as those restrictions become less and less throughout this year and into next year, we might still be wearing masks, but we're going to take those opportunities to try to make this transition as minimized in terms of the emotional impact of it as we possibly can by recreating those events. And I think we have unlimited opportunity to do that even in new and creative ways.
All right, good. And lastly, if this does pass tonight, I did hear loud and clear in terms of the orientation and having the opportunity for these kids to see the new school in the event that this does pass tonight. And I do hope that you're thinking that through and giving them the opportunity before the bell rings. Absolutely.
Orientations are so important because, especially even before the pandemic, moving to an unfamiliar space it creates anxiety for students and for the parents. Students adapt well. They move into the building within a couple of days. They learn to navigate the space and they get to understand the route they're going to travel. One of the advantages of Hammersholt for parents who have not had the experience of having a child there is, and I use the term in the interactive forum, is it can be compartmentalized. So it can be made more intimate within a larger structure. And the house model, the design that it was created under, really supports that for our 5th and 6th graders. But the introduction to orientation is a critical piece. And what's also more powerful too, what one of our residents alluded to was a student-run orientation, and hearing from the students themselves and having that tour from the students and having them speak to their peers about what it's like to be in that building, that's impactful too. And Dr. Gaskell does an excellent job with that at Hammersholt. And I anticipate that Mr. Hannes will do an excellent job at that at Churchill as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Good questions. Mark 1.
Just a comment. Dr. Valesky, you took some of that. Working in Hammersholt for 5 years, I saw how the older students, student ambassadors, they called them, stepped up and were helping the children. And with the house settings that they have at Hammersholt, it's almost like an elementary school or a couple elementary schools within a large building. The students help each other. They're all in the same boat too, which is good for them. And the last point I want to make is the staff, seeing the staff work and how much, from your position, Dr. Valesky, to every employee in the district. They don't stop at the door when that last school bell rings. I see how much the staff cares. And especially in this year, the craziest year anybody's ever experienced, how much more effort the staff has put in this year. And, the sweat and the tears, they're a dedicated group of individuals to the last one. And I have a lot of confidence in our staff, in our students, and even the parents in this district to get this done for the benefit of all our children. So thank you very much.
Very well said, Mark. I have a few comments, but I see Heather's hand up.
I just had a comment and a question. My comment is, as an educator for a very long time, I can't stress enough the importance of maintaining small class sizes for educational reasons in any year. But coming back from the pandemic and in the immediate years to follow, maintaining small class sizes to be able to really keep a pulse on the students, develop those meaningful relationships. I think it's not just the greatest indicator of their academic success. I think it's going to be a huge indicator of their success of adapting back into schools and feeling positively as we go back into the classroom. My question for Dr. Valesky is, he was talking during the forum the other night about creating an upper elementary school rather than Hammersholt maintaining the identity it has right now. And I was just wondering if you could expand a little bit on what the difference will be.
Thanks, Mr. Bloss. The difference is going to be a shift in culture. And Dr. Gaskell actually has experience in a grade 5 through 8 environment before he came to East Brunswick. So we've had discussions about how we can bring that fifth grade to Hammersholt. And a lot of the concerns that came from the interactive forum, I believe, were we're going to take our fifth and sixth graders and put them in a middle school model and mold them into the middle school model. And that's not what we want to do. What we want to do is we want to bring those elements of what fifth grade is about and be able to tap into those changes that our fifth graders are having and let them explore where their interests are and not force them to do certain things, but give them opportunities to investigate and to create their own path, or at least begin to experiment with that in a very limited way. And we believe that we'll have the opportunity to even provide electives at the fifth grade. So this would be new opportunities for our fifth grade, but still maintaining this culture of you're still young adolescents and you need to be treated that way and given the flexibility to make mistakes and to correct those mistakes and not have a rigid structure where there's intense self-independence. They're still going to need guidance. They're going to need support. They're going to need somebody that will listen to their concerns, and they're going to have somebody that will help guide them. And we're going to have to give them time to adjust. And so this should be a gentle phased approach. And I mentioned it in the remarks in the beginning. We want to elongate the transition to seventh grade. And so that's 5, 6 continuum at Hammersholt. And I understand the concerns that some parents are expressing tonight, because during the transition, some of their children will only be at Hammersholt for 1 year. But after we establish consistency, that 5, 6 continuum can have that elongated transfer and preparedness for seventh grade. And I think that shift to seventh grade as a middle school grade will provide greater benefits for our students in terms of being prepared, not having anxiety at seventh grade. That's not to say it's not going to exist, but our job is to minimize that anxiety, that they are prepared to learn at that level. And I think this gives us that opportunity, but yet treating those students as elementary students. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you. I appreciate your answer.
You're welcome.
Valesky, I had a few questions for you.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm a former PTA president. Proud that I was in the PTA board and then PTA president at Lawrence Brook School when my kids were there. And I heard a lot of people talk at the forum the other night and just other things I've been reading and things that have been sent to us about the fifth grade experience and not wanting their kids to lose out on the fifth grade experience, that they want recess, they want that Halloween parade, they want room parents, they want that sense of still being in fifth grade. So first, I want to know, have you reached out, have you been speaking to the PTA President's Council to get their thoughts on taking that fifth grade experience, replicating it in another building, but still having it be fifth grade? And what are your thoughts about the other elements that I just asked about and that other parents asked you about? The parade, the parties, the room parents, the moving up ceremony, field day, recess.
So the answer to your first question, yes, we have reached out to the PTA President's Council. And we've had discussions about should the board support this grade reconfiguration and how do we create these experiences for the fifth and sixth graders at Hammersholt. And you realize now that our sixth and seventh graders, as a middle school environment, our sixth graders begin to lose things. And in this transition, we have the ability to dial that back a bit and to give not only our fifth graders, but our sixth graders some opportunities for other events that they wouldn't have normally had in our current configuration as middle schoolers. So as an upper elementary school student, not only fifth grade, but sixth grade, we have that potential. And PTA President's Council is on board with us about being able to explore and being able to implement a lot of these and recreate a lot of these. One of the things that I do want to share with the board and with the community, and I hear passionately from some of the parents that came in the interactive forum and those that spoke tonight, There is a faction of parents, though, that will report to us that their fifth graders are changing. They're not the huge fans of the class party anymore. They like going on the playground. They may not want to play on the apparatus. They want to talk to their friends, might want to just walk around. This is the time that some of the students do change. And I think this opportunity allows us to explore what the students need too, and hear clearly from the parents. We have heard from some parents, but this is an opportunity to hear from the parents in the recreation of something for the future that would meet the needs of our fifth and sixth graders at Hammarskjold. And we invite parent involvement. And in fact, Dr. Gaskell has a very active PTA. And one of the reasons he does is he began live streaming his PTA meetings. So using technology even before the pandemic to involve the community paid big dividends, because a lot of parents are busy and they don't have the time to just go to the school for a meeting. But as you know from many of your experiences, they multitask. They're driving someone to an event, they're taking someone to a game or a practice, or they have a meeting themselves they have to be on, or they have to go run an errand. And they're able to actually engage with the PTA. And Dr. Gaskell reports his attendance and his interaction with the PTA is dramatically increased that way. So this is an opportunity to bring more parents in and include their involvement in the planning and preparation of symbolic events and celebration events for the students.
So you have given a lot of thought and are coming up with a lot of initiatives to provide that fifth grade experience. So I'm glad to hear that. Somebody mentioned before about a tour and orientation. I'm wondering, do we need to wait until the very end of the year or the summer before to start that transition? I know we used to have a pen pal program. I don't know if we still have it, but I know that fifth and sixth graders were partnered up so that the fifth graders had a pen pal at Hammarskjold, and the Hammarskjold sixth graders had a pen pal at the elementary schools, and it created a connection. And I know that remember my older son, was still going on, my older son, he loved it because so many of the questions he would have during the year about Hammarskjold, he had a peer to reach out to about it. And could we think about something like that?
Like I said earlier, that's a great idea, because student-to-student interactions and student-led orientations and inductions are very powerful. In fact, I don't know if the board recalls, I think we played the video from Hammarskjold Middle School, the student-produced orientation, which was quite entertaining. Some of the students were pretty candid. So that is an opportunity to have that student interaction. In terms of allowing students in the building, the one thing I would caution the board is, as we begin to wrap up this school year, we still have, pandemic-related restrictions that we have to worry about. But I believe that as we reach Memorial Day, that some of those restrictions statewide will begin to be released. And I think that we can legitimately begin planning, orientations to the building. But and that's why we wanted to have this decision by the board, because we were looking at 16 months before we make this first change. And I believe, and the team believes, that that 16 months is enough time to recreate these elements that the public feels are going to be lost, to be able to showcase some of the events that we haven't even thought about. We as a community haven't thought about. We've thought about a lot of things, but we'll have to vet those with the board, but be able to share those with the community as we start to approach the end of this school year and throughout this summer, and especially as we move into September. And I commit to the community that we are going to have, and fingers crossed, that we can have face-to-face forums and not Zoom forums, but we'll have a Zoom forum if we have to be able to keep the community up to date as we approach September of 2022. And so we can answer their questions, alleviate their concerns, and provide that introduction to students who are going to be making this transition, so they feel they're prepared to go too.
Thank you. And I really believe you've given this a tremendous amount of thought with lots of great input from your team. I was envisioning something not so long along the lines of visiting the buildings, but again, establishing a connection, perhaps after we would get back from winter break in 2022, setting up some kind of a pen pals. Obviously, it wouldn't be like when my older son was in school and be done through AOL and IM, but I think that the kids figure out how to stay in touch. And I think we should do anything we can to encourage that kind of interaction. We had explored for a while having sister schools in other countries, and perhaps doing videos and sharing videos of daily life in their school. Perhaps we could do an exchange like that. Anything that could help bring it a little closer.
We have already had exchanges among our elementary schools. So the elementary schools in one school have been able to visit with another school. We've had physical visits, but we've had actually chats online between some of our elementary schools.
Right.
And I think our Chittick teachers showcased that at one of their board presentations. Dr. Boley, it was Chittick and Warrensdorfer, I believe, that had a relationship at one point.
Yeah, last year.
Right.
So now I think it would be really good to kind of think out of the box with that and expand it and think about having that relationship with the kids who would be in Hammersholt, with the kids coming out of elementary school, moving to Hammersholt in 2022 as fifth graders. I did want to ask about one other thing. I know that parents expressed a concern the other night that they didn't want the 21-22 school year being about getting ready for this transition in September 2022. I know you said 16 months, and it's a good point to make, but they wanted assurance that it wasn't going to interfere with your team spending time and necessary effort on planning for the reopening in September 2021 that we're also looking forward to. So I was wondering if you could just elaborate on that for a few minutes.
Well, number one priority, as I said Tuesday night, was to reopen our schools. And as I mentioned to one of the parents who weighed in, I mentioned that we were not going to be able to move to a full day of instruction with lunch for this school year. And the reason was that we looked at a variety of models. We looked at a different structure for serving lunch at every one of our schools. We went through an enormous and laborious task to figure out all the variations and permutations of doing that safely. And we didn't have the manpower. By spreading people out and maintaining 6 feet of distancing, because that's the requirement right now. When you take your mask off, the requirement is mask off 15 minutes or less within a 24-hour period. So that means consuming food 6 feet apart, having a lot of people spread out, having a lot of supervision. And we didn't have the person power, the person staff, male or female, to do that effectively or safely. So we are focused on September, returning to full days of instruction. The word from the governor as of Wednesday of this week is that remote instruction will not be an option except in very, very identified areas where students might need services through services of a technology or some technological support. But it is not going to be an option for school districts to be remote. So we are planning our return. We had our road back document, our restart and recovery document. We've constantly been revising it. We've been meeting frequently with the team, and we have a solid plan to return in September. And our plan to return in September was actually solidified before we started to fully complete the packaging on the plan I'm putting together tonight and presenting to you on the grade restructuring. We made sure that our energy was focused on that first. But as I mentioned in a couple of meetings for the public, the actual planning began for this grade restructuring in 2019, immediately after the demographer presented to the Board of Education. And this Board of Education began discussions about facilities in 2017, and it's been continuing since then, which really primarily focused on options for a new high school or not a new high school, or do we look at new facilities? Do we look at land? Do we have available land? There were a variety of options, just basically, for lack of a better term, we were spitballing, trying to figure out what options we had available and what resources it would take to accomplish those different things at different levels in time when that opportunity presented itself. But one of the things, as I shared in the interactive forum, and one of the individuals speaking at the Good of the Cause tonight made reference to it. And I think was making reference to the demographer's report, which was completed and updated before the pandemic. But what we're seeing on top of that pandemic is a layering. So now what we're seeing is the projection from the demographer, but also anticipating that that is going to be layered on with the pandemic effect of migration to East Brunswick. And when I say the migration effect, we now have individuals who were tied to a physical office, say like in the city, who now no longer have an office they have to be tied to. Their office disappeared. Their company said, you're not going to report to an office. Your environment is now your office at home. And so people have made decisions to make that migration somewhere. And East Brunswick is an attractive place to be because of the school system this board created and administrations well before me created. And our blue ribbon status has been an attraction for our realtors, been a selling point for the realtors, and our national ranking, both in niche.com and in US News and World Report, certainly pays benefits, but that also brings individuals to our school district. Therefore, creating this problem that we're dealing with tonight, that we know we're going to have class sizes in elementary schools rise. And I guarantee you that we are seeing people in the office today registering right now in peaks and valleys that are starting to flatten out, but at higher levels than we've seen before. And we're also starting to see people who took their children out of East Brunswick schools, put them in private school for the pandemic, but are now returning to East Brunswick schools in anticipation of our return, and probably more to return as we open in September.
Thank you, Dr. Valesky. Susanna?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to make a quick comment, and that was, I appreciated the questions from the board and the responses from Dr. Valesky. I appreciated the forum that was held and the time that the parents took that night and tonight to express the challenges and concerns. And it's important. It's really important feedback, because these are things that we're going to need to watch out for. And as discussed earlier, there's lots of ideas and ways to address those issues and concerns. And I know we've put a lot of focus into the social emotional health of the kids, and knowing, what a challenging time it's been for families and for kids. So I just wanted to say how helpful it's been to just hear this, this discussion, the prior discussions, the feedback, because that helps us kind of formulate the full picture of the issues that have to be tackled, and make sure that we stay focused on addressing all those concerns, because every child is important. We want to make sure that we address all the concerns, and there's a lot of good ideas on how to mitigate some of the issues. And I really appreciate also the efforts that the administrative staff team has put to putting ideas together, and there's certainly still a lot more work to be done. So just really good information. It's been helpful to hear from everybody.
Any other discussion? Okay, seeing no other discussion, will the secretary please call roll to vote on whether to approve Dr. Valesky's recommendation to proceed with acquisition of temporary classroom units and grade reconfiguration?
Mr. Colangelo,
Yes.
Mrs. Chu,
Yes.
Mr. Sismar,
Yes.
Mrs. Guas,
Yes.
Mr. Hong,
Yes.
Mrs. Lax,
Yes.
Mr. Winston,
Yes.
President Becker.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you, everyone. That was a good discussion, tremendous effort. Parents, we need to keep hearing from you. We need to keep helping you. We need to be able to make this work for everyone, and I know we can. I have tremendous confidence, as Susanna and the other board members have said. Mark brought up a terrific point about the house structure being very conducive to small, to more intimate. Thank you, everyone, for the tremendous effort this took. For the rest of our facilities agenda, is there anything else anyone wishes to have separated out? Seeing none, can I please have a motion for items 2 through 5 on the facility agenda?
So moved, Heather.
Moved by Heather,
Second, by Lori.
second by Lori. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Before I accept a motion on tonight's financial services agenda, is there anything needing to be separated out? Seeing none, can I please have, I'm sorry, was that someone saying something or feedback? Okay, feedback. Can I please have a motion for items 1 through 8 on tonight's financial agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Lori,
Second.
second by Heather. Is there any discussion? This is a roll call vote. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Mr. Colangelo,
Yes.
Mrs. Chu,
Yes.
Mr. Sismar,
Yes.
Mrs. Guas,
Yes.
Mr. Hong,
Yes.
Mrs. Lax,
Yes.
Mr. Winston,
Yes.
and President Becker.
Yes, motion carries. Before I accept a motion on tonight's human resources agenda, is there anything anyone would like separated out? Seeing none, can I please have a motion for items 1 and 2 on the human resources agenda?
So moved.
I'm sorry,
So moved.
moved by Lori, second by Liwu. Is there any discussion? Will the secretary please call the roll?
Mr. Colangelo,
Yes.
Mrs. Chu,
Yes.
Mr. Sismar,
Yes.
Mrs. Guas,
Yes.
Mr. Hong,
Yes.
Mrs. Lax,
Yes.
Mr. Winston,
Yes.
President Becker.
Yes, motion carries. Before I accept a motion on the student services agenda, is there anything anyone would like separated out? Seeing none, can I please have a motion for items 1 to 3? I'm getting tremendous feedback. Is anyone else?
Yes.
Okay, is everybody muted, Bernie? Lori isn't. Okay, Lori, it was you. I know it was you.
I unmuted to motion.
Okay. There was a motion and a second, correct?
There was, but I'm not sure who moved or seconded.
Okay,
Motioned.
moved by Lori, and I believe second by Liwu. And was there any discussion? If not, will the secretary please call the roll?
Mr. Colangelo,
Yes.
Mrs. Chu,
Yes.
Mr. Sismar,
Yes.
Mrs. Guas,
Yes.
Mr. Hong,
Yes.
Mrs. Lax,
Yes.
Mr. Winston,
Yes.
and President Becker.
Yes, motion carries. There's only one item on tonight's transportation agenda. Can I please have a motion for item number 1?
So moved, Jeff.
Moved by Lori, second by Jeff. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Is our student rep with us tonight?
Good evening.
Hey, there you are.
Hello.
How's it going?
I'm good. You can hear me fine, right? I've been having a lot of
We can hear you great. I thought you'd be in your college sweatshirt and have bumper stickers for all of us. and
Oh, I probably could have worn my college gear.
That's
but
okay.
It's okay. I hope I told you guys last time that I was heading to Illinois, so
Yeah, it's
verbal
wonderful.
encouragement.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Thank you. Today I wanted to quickly tell you guys about how AP exam fever has been taking over all the students in terms of especially the juniors and the seniors. Normally in a normal year, it's about only 2 weeks, but this year, since they're being administered in multiple forms and in multiple time periods to account for any technical difficulties, it takes about a month. So it's a little bit of an extended, stressful period, but it's okay because it's a part of the high school process, and it gives kids an extra time to study if they need it. But I also wanted to thank EBHS and the administration for being not just now, but even earlier in the pandemic, a complete pinnacle of excellence in terms of being a testing center. And this is one area where EBHS literally stood apart from every other high school in the surrounding region, where last August, especially when every single testing center closed down, EBHS was still there to give the opportunity to the students to take the all-important SATs and subject SATs and any other standardized tests that they wanted to take. So not just for AP exams, where I've been reading up stories about people who don't have the in-person option and they have to take it digital, where the exam actually isn't the same. In some cases, the digital exam is only a multiple choice only version of the regular exam, so there's no re-response. So there is a large difference if you choose to take the digital exam. I was reading stories about how people who don't have the in-person option are kind of forced to take that. And, we have the luxury of choice here at EBHS because you're offering the in-person. So thank you for that on behalf of the students. And I just wanted to acknowledge the fact that, EBHS was always great with being a testing center throughout the pandemic. As you mentioned, Decision Day and I guess college commitment. Decision Day happened May 3rd, which was this Monday. So it was nice and exciting to see all the seniors not just verbally say where they are on person or on the camera, but to see them all in their college gear in person. And the map was created where you can see that some EBHS students are heading far and wide, even across the Atlantic. So that's always fun to see, and across the country to the West Coast. So it's very exciting to see where everyone heads up. In terms of events that have happened, National Honor Society actually had a combo drive the last Saturday, April 26th or April 24th. And the donations that we received actually filled up an entire office worth. We were actually able to give donations to one of the organizations that were supporting us, which was the Central Jersey Diaper Bank. And then we were also able to give to Elijah's Promise, which we coordinated with. And from that point on, Elijah's Promise took the donations and were able to make, and we folded and packaged the bags into about 400 to 500 snack bags. And Elijah's Promise is using that to feed homeless people in the New Brunswick area. So it was a very large success, especially considering that it was only a day and for 3 hours, but we got a great turnout. And we're having another donation drive that's going on concurrently, and that's the food drive for McFoods. If you remember that from last June, that's going on right now. The first weekend was, or the first opportunity to donate was last Sunday. And if anyone is watching and has extra food to donate, no glass items, but any extra food to donate, the next opportunity is May 8th at the mall from 10 to 1. So that will be going on throughout the rest of May. And it's just that's the bulk of my report for tonight. Just wanted to tell you about AP exams and the events that have been going on. Thank you.
Thank you. It is always wonderful to hear about the actions of our students. So unselfish, so generous, with so much heart, no matter what they are going through in their own lives. They find that time and that energy to reach out and donate and create a fundraiser or volunteer, often led by our staff and certainly by the parents. Everyone has just got a lot of heart, and it's wonderful to hear about it. So thank you for bringing us those stories.
No problem at all.
President Becker,
Yeah.
if I could, Tony, thank you very much for giving the shout out about the high school as a testing center. We appreciate the acknowledgement, but I want to pass on my extreme appreciation and support for not only the high school administration for formalizing that testing center, but for every single proctor that was part of that, and every one of our security force who was there for crowd control and making sure people were socially distanced. And this was during a time when a lot of people were apprehensive about going out in public. But yet, as Tony alluded, this was an important event in many of our students' lives, and there were very limited spaces for students to take those assessments. So, but I appreciate the acknowledgement, but the credit goes to those people who organized and supported and staffed those events. So I thank them.
Absolutely. Great point, Dr. Valesky. Security under the best of situations is always a very tough job, but maintaining that during the pandemic and maintaining the integrity of the event and showing the kids how much they care, that's just a key to the success of our security staff.
Oh, and I forgot to mention our entire maintenance staff and Aramark, who did all the cleaning to make sure everything was sanitized after the fact.
Awesome. A total team effort. Anybody else from the board? Committee reports, information. Mark says Mark.
I have two things tonight. First of all, this Sunday's Mother's Day. I could probably speak for weeks on the importance of honoring those that I feel are the true saints in our society. Our mothers protect us. They teach us. They heal us. They support us. And moms out there sacrifice so much for the benefit of their children. My words cannot express the emotions that I feel. From the bottom of my heart, I want to thank all the moms, not just this Sunday, but every day of the year. And my second is this Sunday is the start of National Police Week. I ask you to thank a police officer or a whole police department that has helped you or the ones you love. The officers that protect your children in our schools every day are all former law enforcement officers. And all of us can take comfort knowing that if you do need to call 911, there are dedicated, well-trained men and women that risk their lives at times to come and protect all of us. So God bless our police. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Two very lovely, very articulate sentiments. Anyone else wishing to say anything? I see Jeff Winson, hand up.
Yeah. First, I want to wish all the students who are taking the SAT Saturday morning at 7:30. Go get them. No way to better to end a pandemic with a high SAT score. So I'm excited for them. My daughter's one of them, and she's excited. So there's that. And lastly, I put to the folks and powers that be on this board that if there's a way we can get these back in person with the new CDC guidelines, I'd like to hear more about it, these meetings. So I miss Vicky's face. So yeah, if we could get back in the room, that would be great.
Thank you, Jeff. And I'm going to send you an 8x10 picture of myself that I just happen to have sitting around, along with that gold record that I've been promising you for 2 years. So no problem. Victor, if you could coordinate, Francis, perhaps your office will have some up-to-date guidelines for us on boards meeting in person, and perhaps next meeting Matt could talk about it, or if you're again, we'd love to hear it.
Absolutely.
Anyone else? Heather, and then Susanna, and then Liwu, and then Lori.
The Student Services Committee met on April 27th. It was really interesting. We had the opportunity to hear from Frank Malta, the supervisor of athletics, about what's been happening with the ongoing seasons with the COVID protocols and how things have been coming along for the teams. It's exciting to hear about the spring season being well underway, especially as I have an athlete myself, well, two. We also met with Eric Meyer, the new supervisor of PE and health, and discussed community involvement and sports and within the district. We also had, Paul Natalicio came and gave an interview about the drills and security within the schools during the pandemic. There was a lot of information I was unaware of and was glad to have had him there. And we had information shared about behavioral support for students and an overview of the Autism Awareness Month. It was my first meeting there as chair, and it was just an excellent source of information. I appreciated all of it.
Thank you, Heather. You did a good job for your first meeting too.
Thank you.
I believe it was Susanna Lebu and then Lori.
Yeah, thanks. I just have a report from the Human Relations Council on May 3rd. The township and the Human Relations Council co-sponsored a Ramadan tree lighting ceremony, the first ever, and the speakers discussed the meaning of Ramadan to Muslims around the world. So that was a lovely ceremony that was quite well attended. And just another event that is going to be taking place May 11th. There will be a Facebook Live event to discuss the topic of ageism. So again, to access these and past programs, follow East Brunswick Human Relations Council on Facebook, and you can find videos there. And that's the one great thing about pandemic is the online sessions are a very convenient way, it turns out, to reach a lot of people. So what we're seeing on a lot of these events are hundreds and thousands in some cases of people have gone on to view and participate. So very, very good attendance at those. That's all I have.
Thank you, Susanna. Lebu?
Last night, we had a curricular committee meeting. It's so unfortunate that that was the last one of this school year. I really love this community, this committee, and I'm always be happy to be part of it. So I'm so excited to know that the 3 new textbooks were recommended and adapted by the committee. So it's always good for the committee, for the teachers to review the textbook they're using and to get the newest one to our students, because science, technology, society is developing so quick. So our textbook should reflect those new advancements, so that we should keep our students in pace with the new development. So I'm so glad that 3 new textbooks were adapted last night. And additionally, there was 1 course was approved by the committee that were presented to the board for approval. So I want to thank Dr. Bowley and her team did such a wonderful job. Because of their job, our student is kept update, and they are exposed to the new technology, new development, and the new society, and will get them ready for their future. Thank you, Dr. Bowley and your team. That's all I have.
Thank you, Lebu. It's easy to tell you love that committee. You do a really good job too.
Thank you.
And last but not least.
So Tony, I just wanted to say I love hearing about the AP exams and all of that. This was my first time as a parent for the AP exams. And I laughed because we talked about the students' resiliency. All day I kept saying, all morning, I was so nervous, thinking, how'd you do? My daughter gets in the car and said, that was so much fun. I love writing this whole response to the questions. And I thought, wow, I'm really glad I'm not a student again. So I think it's great that you guys have such wonderful attitudes with your testing. I know as a senior, this is exciting because you're kind of, coming into the home stretch, but I just wanted to mention that. And I know we gave our resolutions last week. And since Mark also brought up our upcoming week, I was not aware of that, but that's a very important week for our law officers. I just wanted to say one more final thank you to our staff and our nurses. I am a parent first, so the PTA is a big part of my life, and I've had a lot of fun this week telling the staff how much that I, on behalf of the PTA and all my PTA parents, appreciate them. But what I thought was so amazing was that the staff in this district, they don't take anything for granted. I got so many thank yous, and I'm thinking my job is to thank you for everything you do every year for our kids, but especially this year. And these people, the men and women, are coming up to the PTA and thanking us for giving them breakfast or giving them a gift or giving them a power bar. And it's just amazing. They were actually touched by it. And I don't think they realize what an impact they have on the parents and the kids in this district. So it starts with you, Dr. V, top down, but this is one hell of a place to work. And you know how we feel about Mr. Cittadino next door. I did have one staff member that came and said, she's a steal. And she said, you know what? When I was in Old Bridge, didn't do any of this. She said, you tell him. I said, he's my friend and neighbor. She said, you tell him. She said that I say hi, but wow. She said, East Brunswick really knows how to appreciate their staff. So there you go.
Thank you. I will not share that with Mr. Cittadino, but I'm sure you will.
I definitely will for you.
Anybody else have anything? Seeing none, we do have a need for a closed session. Whereas the Board of Education must discuss matters which are not appropriate for discussion in a public meeting, and the Board of Education intends to discuss the matters as follows. Those items listed in tonight's agenda. Length of closed session is estimated to be 90 minutes, after which a public meeting of the board shall reconvene and action will not be taken. Can I please have a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Moved by Lori.
Second.
Second by Lee Wu. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Thank you for joining us tonight. Stay safe. Board members, please log out and log back into the closed session.
Good night, Tony.
Aye.